A half-empty theater, May 1989. Second row. A kid with a large Coke, sneakers up on the seat in front of him. On the screen, a man with a mullet and a philosophy degree is about to do something this kid will replay in his head for the next 37 years. He doesn't blink. 3 rows back, a critic is scribbling his review. He'll call it ludicrous. He'll be right about everything, and wrong about the only thing that matters. That kid came back every weekend for a month. If you were that kid, subscribe, because we're tracking down every face on that screen. Roadhouse. 5 Razzie nominations, savaged by critics, loved by everyone else. 37 years later, this movie hasn't just survived. A franchise, a remake, an off-Broadway stage show. It conquered. 8 actors lit up that screen. 3 have left us. 1 was blind from infancy and never saw a single frame of the film that introduced him to the world. Another almost turned the role down. In 2026, at 81, he's working more than ever. And the one at the center of everything, walked off this set with 2 broken ribs. The film he chose next, because of those ribs, became the biggest of his career. We'll get there. Number 8 first. A gymnast from Washington, D.C., 0 acting credits. A black belt earned studying under a 9-time world kickboxing champion. And 1 shot at a movie set that changed the game. Not just for her, but for every woman in Hollywood stunts. Julie Michaels. Joel Silver spotted her at a martial arts exhibition in 1988. No agent, no headshot, no reel. He didn't care. 2 weeks later, she was on a soundstage, figuring out what a call sheet was while filming her very first scene alongside Patrick Swayze. Roadhouse gave Julie Michaels a career. What she did with it is the real story. 2 years later, she fought Keanu Reeves in Point Break. Not a choreographed stumble. A full contact, no apology brawl so convincing the New York Times singled her out as the woman who took down the action hero. That reputation traveled. Jason Goes to Hell, Batman and Robin, the Scorpion King opposite Dwayne Johnson. Film after film, she kept showing up, kept absorbing hits, kept studying how action was built from the ground up. And then she stopped standing in front of the camera and started running everything behind it. Stunt coordinator, SEAL team, How to Get Away with Murder, Jane the Virgin, Nashville. Her name on the call sheet, but in a different column now. Picture this. An Emmy ceremony in Los Angeles. The stunt coordination category. It had existed for years. Every nominee, every year, 1 kind of name. And then a name is read that hasn't been read before. Julie Michaels, the first woman ever nominated in that category. She's 55, still coordinating, still married to fellow stunt legend Pee Wee Piemonte. They met on a horror set in '93, married the same year, and have been choreographing chaos together for 3 decades. But the man who hired Dalton to clean up the double deuce, the quiet one behind the bar who started the whole story, he spent most of the 1970s saving lives on a very different kind of screen. Behind a pane of glass in the Smithsonian, there's a uniform. Dark blue. Los Angeles County Fire Department patch on the shoulder. It doesn't belong to a real firefighter. It belongs to Roy DeSoto. Kevin Tighe wore that uniform for 5 years on Emergency, a show that premiered in 1972 when America had barely a dozen paramedic services in the entire country. By the time the series ended, there were hundreds. Kids who watched Roy DeSoto and Johnny Gage ride that rescue truck grew up and became the paramedics we call today. That uniform earned its place behind glass. But here's what Roy DeSoto never told you. When that show ended, the role that made Kevin Tighe famous became a cage he couldn't escape. In his own words, he couldn't get arrested. So he tore it down and started over. He moved to New York. Studied with Stella Adler and Bobby Lewis, the way a beginner would. Worked the regional stages, small rooms, finding his footing 1 performance at a time. The man America trusted to save lives on Saturday nights spent years quietly becoming someone new. It worked. In 1987, John Sayles cast him in Matewan as a cold-blooded company enforcer. And Hollywood saw a different Kevin Tighe. 2 years later, Roadhouse was waiting. Frank Tilghman. The bar owner with a checkbook and a problem. Tighe played him as a man who knew he was in over his head and had exactly 1 play left. Hire someone dangerous. From there, the range only widened. What's Eating Gilbert Grape? Canada's Genie Award for Best Supporting Actor. And then Lost, where he played Anthony Cooper, the con man father you love to hate. 5 decades of work, and he never stopped reinventing himself. But Roadhouse followed him everywhere. In a 2013 interview, Tighe admitted he's gotten more comments on this film than anything else he's ever done. He couldn't explain it. He credited the music. He's 81, still working, still close with his emergency partner Randolph Mantooth. He was best man at Mantooth's wedding in 2002, 3 decades after they first rode that rescue truck together. If that kind of loyalty doesn't make you want to stick around, hit subscribe. Because the next story involves a 5-night fistfight on a frozen riverbank, and a log that was not a prop. Take 62, a riverbank somewhere in California, past midnight. 2 men circling each other in the dark, breath visible, fists taped. No stunt doubles, no padding. The director isn't calling cut because the fight isn't over, and neither are they. Marshal Teague was never supposed to be here. The role of Jimmy Reno, Brad Wesley's enforcer, the dark mirror of Dalton, was offered to Scott Glenn first. Glenn passed. Teague walked into Joel Silver's office with a resume most actors don't carry. Navy veteran, Vietnam, NATO heavyweight kickboxing champion, then a deputy sheriff in Memphis, working undercover cases that required him to become someone else entirely. He'd driven to Los Angeles in 1978 with nothing but a truck and a Bob Seger cassette. Silver looked at him, heard the background, and didn't need a second meeting. But the fight is why you remember Marshal Teague. 5 nights, 5.5 hours each, 71 takes on that riverbank. Benny Urquidez, the man behind the choreography, 9 black belts, retired, undefeated, set the framework. But Teague and Swayze made it personal. They barely spoke between takes. That tension was deliberate. Teague's style was military, sharp, precise. Swayze moved like a dancer because he was one. The collision of those 2 rhythms is what makes the scene crackle 37 years later. And then there's the log, a moment where Jimmy swings a piece of wood at Dalton's head. Teague grabbed it, swung hard, connected. He thought it was a breakaway prop. It was solid timber. By the time filming wrapped, Swayze had cracked ribs and a knee swollen enough to need fluid drained. Teague walked away with a fractured eye socket. They shook hands after the last take. Today, Marshal Teague is 73. Over 130 credits. The Rock with Sean Connery. Armageddon with Bruce Willis. 8 episodes of Walker, Texas Ranger. 6 appearances on Babylon 5. The man who nearly ended Dalton never stopped working. But while Teague and Swayze were trading real punches on that riverbank, someone else on the Roadhouse set was making a different kind of magic. A guitar laid flat across a lap, and not a shred of sight. Listen, 1 chord, open E. The kind of note that hums in your chest before your brain catches up. That's how Jeff Healey played. Straight to the body, no detour through the head. Remember the man from the beginning? The one who never saw a single frame of the film that introduced him to the world? This is him. Jeff Healey was born in Toronto on March 25, 1966. Before his first birthday, retinoblastoma, a rare cancer of the eyes, took his sight completely. Both eyes removed, prosthetics in their place. And at 3 years old, someone put a small acoustic guitar in his hands. He didn't hold it the way you've seen guitars held. He laid it flat across his lap, fingers draped over the fretboard from above, like a pianist playing a table. No one taught him this. He invented it because he couldn't see how anyone else did it. That technique, pulling notes with the full strength of his hand, bending them in ways no upright player could reach, became one of the most distinctive sounds in blues. By his early 20s, Stevie Ray Vaughan and Albert Collins had found him playing Toronto clubs. B.B. King heard him and said he'd never witnessed anything like it. And then a screenwriter walked into one of those clubs, watched a blind guitarist commanding the room from a bar stool, and wrote a character based on what he saw. Cody, the house band leader at the Double Deuce. The man who kept playing while the chairs flew. Jeff Healey wasn't acting. He was being himself with a different name. Angel Eyes reached number 5 on the Billboard Hot 100, Juno Entertainer of the Year, 1990. Millions of albums sold worldwide. And then, quietly, with no announcement, he taught himself trumpet, became a jazz historian, hosted a radio show on the CBC, and amassed a personal collection of over 30,000 vintage jazz records. Years later, he opened a club in Toronto. He named it Jeff Healey's Roadhouse. The name came from the movie, not the other way around. On March 2nd, 2008, Jeff Healey left us. He was 41. The guitar is quiet now. But if you listen to the Roadhouse soundtrack, really listen, you can still hear a man who saw music more clearly than most of us see anything. 3,000 miles from that Toronto club, the man who made Dalton's life a nightmare had started his own story on a Broadway stage. 1955. A Broadway stage. The curtain rises on Tennessee Williams' Cat on a hot tin roof. And the man playing Brick, the angry, wounded, magnetic center of that play, is performing the role for the first time in human history. No one has played this part before him. He's 24 years old and already unforgettable. His name is Biagio Anthony Gazzara. The world will know him as Ben. From that stage, Gazzara walked straight into the movies. Otto Preminger cast him opposite James Stewart in Anatomy of a Murder in 1959, a courtroom drama that pushed boundaries most studios wouldn't touch for another decade. Then came television. Run for Your Life on NBC, where Gazzara played a successful lawyer told he has a terminal diagnosis, who decides to live every remaining day as if it's borrowed time. 3 seasons, 3 Golden Globe nominations, 2 Emmy nominations. The role fit him like a second skin. Then a friend named John Cassavetes handed him a camera-ready chaos most actors run from. No real script, no safety net. Just 3 men, Gazzara, Cassavetes, and Peter Falk, improvising a marriage falling apart on film for hours. Other actors played it safe. Gazzara jumped. By the time he arrived on the Roadhouse set, Gazzara had been working for 34 years. He was 58. He turned Brad Wesley, the corrupt businessman, the man who owned the sheriff and squeezed the town, into something the script alone couldn't deliver. He didn't play a cartoon. He played a man who genuinely believed he was right. That's harder. And that's why Wesley still feels dangerous. After Roadhouse, Gazzara kept working for 2 more decades. The Big Lebowski, Buffalo 66, Dogville alongside Nicole Kidman. And at 72, he won his first and only Emmy for the 2002 HBO film Hysterical Blindness. On February 3rd, 2012, Ben Gazzara left us. He was 81. He'd spent 57 years on a stage or a screen or a set. He never stopped. And the woman Dalton fell for, the one who was never supposed to be in this movie at all, she turned down one of the most famous roles in Hollywood history. And someone else's life changed forever. A phone rings, 1988. Her agent, on the other end, has 4 words. There's this other movie. Kelly Lynch had just wrapped Drugstore Cowboy with Gus Van Sant, a raw, low-budget crime film that would earn her an Independent Spirit nomination and mark her as one of the most interesting young actresses in America. And now her agent is describing something very different. A bar, a bouncer, a monster truck. She read the script, didn't understand a word of it. But here's the thing, she wasn't the first choice. Annette Bening had already been cast as Doc, the small-town doctor who falls for Dalton. The chemistry with Swayze wasn't there. Bening was let go, and Lynch, who happened to be under contract to United Artists, got the call she never expected. She met Joel Silver. He looked at her and said something she never forgot. He doesn't make art, he buys it. Then he promised her Roadhouse would be the best drive-in movie ever made. She said yes. And for a very long time, people thought the most interesting thing about Kelly Lynch was the movie she said yes to. They were wrong. After Roadhouse, Lynch kept moving. Desperate Hours, Curly Sue, John Hughes' final film as a director, Charlie's Angels, The L Word from 2004 to 2009, Magic City, Mr. Mercedes alongside Brendan Gleeson. But it's the role she didn't take that still echoes loudest. 1992, Basic Instinct, the part of Catherine Trammell, the role Sharon Stone turned into a cultural earthquake. That part was offered to Kelly Lynch first. Picture the room. A script on the table that everyone in town wants. The most talked about female role of the decade, hers to take. Her agent leaning forward. And Kelly Lynch, fresh off an Independent Spirit nomination, knowing exactly what this part would do to her career, slides it back across the table. She said no. Nobody saw that coming. Not the studio. Not her agent. Stone took the role, and the rest is cinema history. Lynch never explained the decision publicly. She didn't need to. She'd already decided what kind of career she wanted. Selective, varied, on her own terms. Born January 31st, 1959, in Golden Valley, Minnesota. A college dropout who worked as a flight attendant, then walked into the elite modeling agency, then studied under Sanford Meisner, and built a career that spans nearly 4 decades. She's 67. Married to writer and producer Mitch Glazer since '92. Still acting. Still choosing. Which brings us to number 2. The Voice. the mustache, and a man who, in 1988, very nearly said no to all of it. 2026, a soundstage somewhere in Texas. A man steps into frame wearing boots, a canvas jacket, and a mustache that hasn't changed in 4 decades. The crew doesn't check the call sheet. They already know. Sam Elliott is filming Season 3 of Landman for Paramount+. Earlier this year, he voiced the dragon in an upcoming film called Grendel, alongside Jeff Bridges and Bryan Cranston. And in April, at 81 years old, he showed up at Coachella in a black and white short with Sabrina Carpenter, playing a cop who pulled her over because she looked curious. The audience that found him through Roadhouse is in their 60s. The audience that found him through that Coachella clip is in their 20s. He belongs to both. Born August 9th, 1944, Sam Elliott is 81 today. Now rewind. 1988. You've been waiting for him since the first 30 seconds of this video. The one who almost turned the roll down. This is him. Elliott didn't want Roadhouse. He'd read the script. He wasn't interested. Director Rowdy Herrington called him and said, "If you don't do this movie, I'm finished." Joel Silver had a different pitch. He looked at Elliott and said 5 words that landed. "You've got a lot of baggage." Elliott took the part. And he turned Wade Garrett, the aging cooler, Dalton's mentor, the old fighter who arrives late and swings like he has nothing left to protect, into something the page alone couldn't carry. It was Elliott's idea for Wade to call Dalton Mijo, Spanish for my son. 1 word, 1 choice. And suddenly the bond between them felt lived in, real in a way no line of dialogue could manufacture. After Roadhouse, Elliott kept building. Tombstone, where the mustache belonged in every frame. The Big Lebowski, where he narrated the whole story as the stranger and made it feel like a campfire tale. We Were Soldiers. Ghost Rider. Thank You for Smoking. Then, at 74, he stood beside Lady Gaga and Bradley Cooper in A Star is Born and earned an Oscar nomination for Best Supporting Actor. ASAG Award followed for the Western miniseries 1883. Not a bad second act for a man who almost said no. He's been married to actress Catherine Ross since 1984. They have a daughter named Cleo. He lives on a ranch in Malibu. And at 81, he still walks onto a set every morning like it's the first time. There's one person left, the one you've been waiting for since the beginning. The dancer, the fighter, the man with the broken ribs and a decision to make. This is his story. Remember the broken ribs? 2 of them, cracked on a California riverbank, past midnight, during a fight scene that took 5 nights to finish. The man who walked off that set could barely stand. His knee was full of fluid. His body was saying 1 word: stop. He didn't stop, but he did listen. Patrick Wayne Swayze was born on August 18th, 1952, in Houston, Texas. His mother ran a dance studio. His father rode horses on weekends. The son grew up splitting the difference: ballet at the Joffrey, brawls on a film set, and never saw a contradiction. Broadway came first. Grease, 1978. Then Hollywood. The Outsiders, Red Dawn, roles that let him hit and be hit. And then Dirty Dancing, a summer romance at a Catskills resort that turned him into the biggest movie star in America. He earned a Golden Globe nomination. He co-wrote She's Like the Wind, which reached number 3 on the Hot 100. The dancer had become a songwriter. The fighter had written a love song. 2 years later, Roadhouse. Dalton, the cooler with a philosophy degree and a scar he won't talk about. Swayze did his own stunts. Trained under Benny Urquidez alongside the entire cast. And on that riverbank, trading real punches with Marshall Teague for 71 takes, his ribs gave out. That injury is the hinge. Everything after it turns on what he did next. He passed on Tango and Cash, passed on Predator 2, picked up a script about a man who dies, refuses to leave the woman he loves, and learns to reach across the distance one more time. Ghost, the highest grossing film of 1990. 2 more Golden Globe nominations. People's Sexiest Man Alive, 1991. The biggest role of his life only happened because a stunt went wrong. The ribs broke. The career bent towards something gentler. And out of that gentleness came a film that made grown men cry in a dark theater and never tell anyone. Point Break followed. Then To Wong Fu, a drag queen played so honestly it earned a 3rd Golden Globe nomination. A star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame, 1997. His last role was FBI agent Charles Barker in The Beast on A&E, 2009. He filmed every episode. He never missed a call time. Patrick Swayze left us on September 14th, 2009, 57 years old. The ribs healed a long time ago. What he built while they were healing is still here. In a roadhouse bar on a screen somewhere. In a potter's wheel turning in the dark. Final chapter. 3 of the 8 have left us. Jeff Healey found music in the dark and made the rest of us hear it. Ben Gazzara carried nearly 6 decades of intensity onto every stage and every set and never once eased up. Patrick Swayze moved through this world like every room was a dance floor and every fight was personal. Because to him, they were. They're gone. What they left behind is still playing. 8 Faces. One movie the world wasn't supposed to remember. A gymnast who became the first woman to break through a door no one had opened in Hollywood stunts. A paramedic whose uniform ended up behind glass in the Smithsonian. A Navy veteran who threw real punches on a frozen riverbank and meant every one. A blind guitarist who played notes the rest of us could feel but never quite reach. A stage actor who brought half a century of craft to a roadside bar and made the villain feel real. A woman who said no when everyone else would have said yes. An 81-year-old cowboy who never left the saddle. And a dancer from Houston who made the toughest guy in the room feel like the most tender. That's Roadhouse, 37 years later, still standing. If someone in this cast meant something to you, tell us who and why in the comments. And if you haven't already, subscribe. There are more stories coming.